Hello. There we go. There's stats and whatnot. Hello and welcome to the Roach Crossing. Uh, one of these, one of these days, I won't have to think about it. Weekly general live stream, July 21st, 2022. Hello, Tennyson. Hello, the good number of people who are watching and being quiet. This is the minus facial hair edition. There's a single green bottle fly flying around here. It's very annoying. Hello, Martin. Good to see you. Hello, Alan. Yeah, I stream every Thursday unless I say otherwise. I gotta see for the talking point when I first started growing out the facial hair. Can I see? April 21st I had it. Didn't have it on March 10th or the following week. Started it on March 31st, it seems. So it's been since about late March that I had been letting it grow. It's the longest I've ever grown out my facial hair for. So this week, lots of things to discuss simultaneously. Not a lot and a lot at the same time. One of those weird situations in that the Tennessee trip happened and was very productive. The long and short of it is, it was an 8-hour drive. I drove the whole way because I don't trust Kai with my car. And about maybe over 8 hours because we had some fun stops and whatnot. I'll get into that. So maybe over 8 hours down. We got there around 5 p.m. We got to Briceville around 5 p.m. Our lovely guide, Mr. Sampson, took us to one spot first where we collected some odds and ends, including some Cryptocarchus right eye. I got a video with Kai of right eye in their wild habitat. There was a large log that I ripped to shreds and found various fun things, not necessarily all for me. A lot of things that TJ is probably going to want, or I've already notified him of some stuff. Hello, some eggs. Good to see you. Let's see. Then we took off for town for the night, and we went to the best spot of the I guess 3 spots we went to, and found a bunch of Aphiloria polychroma, which I collected a good number of them. They are sitting in a bin in here, so I can take extra good care of them. What else? Some urids from there, from Norris, Tennessee. What else? Kai set up his big light rig, the one that's supposed to be incredible and amazing and awesome and never fail, and didn't seem to find quite as much as he expected. Blamed it on the humidity. Could have been the place we were lighting, could have been a lot of other things, but I was expecting a fair amount more than we found at his lights with his generator. The most noteworthy find, that's my alarm that I snoozed for the live stream. The most noteworthy finds, for me at least, the ones that stick out in my head the most were the cave crickets. Got 3-ish new species, localities of cave crickets. First one, some big ones that Alan has preemptively identified as Pseudophilus gracilis. I was looking at the ovipositors and the body patterning and comparing it to my gracilis, and they might be something different. I have to get the pictures of the two side by side and compare them. But I think they might be something other than Gracillipes. Could be of just a variation, but I need to do that eventually. Get a picture of the adult males and then compare the female ovipositors. Oh, this green bottlefly is going to annoy me so much. Anyways, but that's not the most exciting. I guess it kind of is, kind of isn't, because the other species are smaller, but I think they are interesting in their own ways. The greenhouse cave cricket, which I thought it was, I haven't actually seen these greenhouse cave crickets in person, except maybe once. Kim Klesiak maybe sent me some, or I got some from her. This would have been when I was in high school, I think. So it's been a long time, and I don't think I actually ever reared them to adulthood, so I didn't know how large they get. But they were very abundant at the site with the pseudophilus, and the species, as Bug Guide distinguishes between a Japanese cave cricket and a greenhouse cave cricket. Other things don't seem to do that, but they make notes on the literature and whatnot. So by Bug Guide's definitions and whatnot, they are Distramina acinnamera, which is a supposedly very common species in people's basements and crawl spaces and whatnot, but being common and having people who are willing to collect them in good numbers to start colonies of them is a different story. So while I was there, I loaded up on them. There were a lot of small individuals, and then I managed to catch what might be an adult pair, just a larger pair. And I was very impressed with how large the female was, and they have just this very unique look to them. The whole body's very, at least the presence of the organism is very angular. When you see a pseudophilus hanging off of something, they sort of sit with their limbs arranged in an oval shape when they're just sort of hanging out, with respect to the individual placement of the tips of the legs. And of course, the body dangles down, so they look very complex that way. Versus these Distramina, they sit very squat to the wall, and it's very angular the way their legs are, like they're at very geometric points, like they're almost a hexagon, I guess. So they look very different when they're just hanging out. So let me read chat. Are they house crickets that are green? Hello, Chris. I don't think there are any crickets that are green. I could be wrong, but Techie Signees says Tennyson. Let's see. Yes, that seems to be sentiment. Oh, very tired. I'll get to that though. Yeah, so it is whatever entity that is, and it's distinguished from the Japanese one, which is also introduced in the U.S. by markings and male genitalia, according to Bug Guide. So who knows? I could have a mix of both. Although we were outside of the recorded range, they could be expanding quite rapidly, as I think the original greenhouse cave crickets did. So anyways, so that was one of the finds. Chris Snyder says greenhouse and caves just doesn't seem like it would work. Yeah, and so these were on the side of an old like rock wall type structure thing, and there was so much moss, and there were so many cool bugs on that rock wall. There were the giant springtails, the Pogonognathelus elongatus. There were Narcissus americanus, a lot of small ones eating the moss. I got video of, I think the genus is an Abastion. Yeah, Abastion. So Alan, this is that millipede you thought it was. I guess somebody proposed that they might be predatory on other millipedes, and I guess that's fine for that assertion to stand. I don't know if they made any observations of them or whatnot, but I have video of the Abastion eating moss on the side of the rock wall. So we have evidence that they don't eat other millipedes, and we just have sort of we have direct videographic evidence of them eating moss. We don't have any sort of direct evidence other than anecdotes that they eat other millipedes. So that leads me to believe that they are probably detritivores, but they might be picky about what they eat. So hello, Bunklo Minus. Stephen Logan, unrelated question. Do you have any macropenestia rhinoceros, and do you offer a military discount? Shoot me an email and we can discuss that. If anybody else is listening in, there will be some rhino roaches available after the Arizona trip, which will be in late August. So getting back to the Tennessee thing, so that was two-ish. There's another cave cricket that I collected. Might be the same species. Not 100% sure it's another Pseudophilus, so I'll take some eyeballing. But the last one is, let me pull this up because I never imagined that I would come across these. I'm so used to all the cave crickets I see everywhere being Pseudophilus, and so I need to pull up the genus name for this other one. So Distramina hopefully will stick in my head, but let's see if this will or won't. It's a different group. In the Dolichopodeinae, genus Hadonicus. Truly cave crickets. And as for the species, apparently it's pretty arbitrary determining them, and the variable I'm just reading off a bug guide, but this is probably likely true. Different regional variants of the same species. So this genus Hadonicus needs to be re-examined and redetermined and whatnot. There's probably some illegitimate species and some species that need to be added. So, but these are Hadonicus from Norris, Tennessee. So they're an actual cave cricket. And finding these, there were a couple of them on a rock wall. This message is held for review. Let's see. Oh, it's just a cockroach. I don't know why I did that. Some eggs. It held your thing for review. Anyways, so these Hadonicus. Should I post see if I can get a picture off a bug guide and just post a link? Because I didn't upload a video yet. I did take a video of me crawling into this thing. So we were wrapping up at this place that Kai was lighting at, and that Samson and I went off and walked around in, and I had been picking up the Aphiloria, so it may have been some cyanide on my hands, and I think my hands were just dirty from touching stuff in general. And I sat down to eat, and I eat some stuff, and I was very apathetic about it. And Samson told me that there was a tub spring, somewhere nearby. And I was like, what is that? Like, I assumed it had something to do with water. And so he took us over to it, and it's like a well thing that they've sort of cut out of the whatever that rock is there. I don't think it's a limestone. Out of whatever the rock is, and it's just basically a spot where the groundwater can seep up and out and flow through this little thing area. No idea why. I'm gonna see, maybe it was dolomite. It was in the Appalachians near the Cumberland. So that I have no idea. It could be dolomite. So anyway, so it's basically this big cubical space, maybe like 5 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet, or a little smaller than that, kind of cut into the rock and stuff. And so when we were walking over there, very close to it, there were a couple of the Distramina cave crickets, and I thought, I'm good on these. I already collected a bunch. I need to collect any more. And then I saw a couple close to the tub spring thing that looked kind of weird, and I was like, huh, but it didn't click. I thought maybe they were just pale Distramina. And then I looked into the tub spring thing, and here's just this beautiful sort of man-made cave ecosystem with the flowing water, and there's just all the climbing salamanders up in the crevices, and a Dolomites, big old Dolomites fishing spider sitting on eggs in the back corner, and the salamander larvae in the little, maybe like, I don't know, like an inch of water at the bottom. And it's just this foreign ecosystem that we just don't have in Michigan that's just so cool. And so I looked up at the ceiling, and here were all these cave crickets, and it's like, those are not the same as what I was just looking at. Those are not. Yes, basically just a wet hole. Wet holes are very nice, full stop. uh, so I crawled in there, and actually hadn't brought any gear with me over to that spot. I had left it all over by the area where we were eating, and so I was like, oh great, now I got to run back and grab containers. So I ran back and grabbed a big deli cup, and I went in there, and it's very cramped space, and trying to get these Hadnicus to jump into the container, and they're bouncing all over the place and land in the water, and they can run on top of the water, so they run across the water and all this stuff. And I only have so many chances to try and actually catch them, because they could scurry into there was this big room, but then there were also smaller areas that had been cut out behind it that I couldn't access, because it's just like a 2 foot by 1 foot hole area beyond the hole in which I'm currently in. So if all of them got into another area, it'd be very difficult for me to try and catch some more. So I caught about maybe 15 of them. And Kai was like, "Oh, you have plenty enough." I'm like, "I'm not gonna be back here probably for a very long time, and Samson may not want to actually get in here and do this." So, so I caught those, and so now I have these Dextramina and have them set up, and haven't had any losses in them. Haven't had many losses in everything, but then again, it has only been, wow, actually, it's been like 4 days since the weekend. Where does the time go? Oh my gosh, I've just been putting away stuff, and Kai has, because of Alan telling him things about my collecting style and abilities, Kai thought that I was a bad collector. And then Kai sort of changed his opinion, seeing just how much stuff I caught, because this was in part because the lighting wasn't the best. He only brought back, I don't know, like 7, 8 containers of stuff, just kind of things here and there that he wanted. There was some small black rutiline beetle that he wanted, and so he had found those and didn't really collect much else after that. He grabbed a couple of things from me and whatnot that he thought that I wanted. But when I go out collecting, it's like, oh look, a springtail, oh look, an isopod, oh look, a beetle, oh look, a darkling beetle, oh look, a cave cricket, oh look, another species of cave cricket, oh look, a millipede, oh look, another millipede, oh look, another bark beetle. And so, catch 10 things, and 3 of them culture long term, and it's a success. So I collect a lot of stuff. I still have a good amount of things to put away, and on top of that, have to really trying to wrap up getting all these things that have just sort of been sitting in containers or in temporary enclosures into permanent enclosures, because I have a busy week next week, a busy weekend next weekend, and then we sort of get into the end game prior to me going out west. And so I really want to get things situated so they're easy to take care of while I'm gone. And so that was basically the Tennessee trip. Oh, and then we went to the rest stop at night. That was, it's a stain on there. It's unfortunate. Nobody look at that. So then we went to the rest stop, which has been very productive, at least in the past. It was very productive on our southbound trips for things. And even actually, Will and I stopped there on our way down south in the spring, and we went and caught some things there at this one Tennessee Welcome area rest stop. So in the past, though, it's been absolutely really, really good at night for things. Would be millipedes and beetles and all kinds of stuff out on the grassy areas. And maybe it was lack of rain, or maybe it was just the change in popularity, timing out. I have no idea, but it was not as fruitful as it usually has been. I think part of it was they put LEDs or something on the picnic table areas. So instead of these big structures just being dark all night, now they've got light on them. It really discourages nocturnal things from crawling out onto them. So that was unfortunate. I did collect the Parcoblata alleriana adult female. What are those urinal beetles you always find in the Midwest? Urinal beetles? I've never heard of that before. Also, I'll go up and touch on a couple more of the comments when I'm done waxing about the Tennessee trip. So I found Gryllus cricket. I think I brought this up before, but there's a researcher who's looking into was it masculine feminization of Gryllus species and is doing some molecular work and has asked me to collect grylids, grylini, and whatnot for that work. So, I was quite excited to find an adult female, hopefully get eggs, and feel that it's one of the species in the clade that overwinters as nymphs or can alternate as nymphs or eggs, and so won't have a hard diapause in the eggs. So that was at that rest station as well. And then the original plan was we were going to sleep in the car at the rest station. And the rest area was better lit than I remember it being. And I was very much so sort of done. I was like, this has been a very productive trip. I'm fine with getting a hotel room. So we ended up getting a hotel room at like 2 a.m. and then taking off the next day. Went and drove Samson back, picked up some chickens, which was actually the main reason I drove down, was to get these chickens, which are the descendants of the eggs that we grabbed from Key Largo. And so I really wanted to get some babies from them. And so now that's why I went down in the first place, to get the chickens, and everything else was just icing on the cake. So there is one more story to add to this. So we drive down and we get to this aforementioned Tennessee rest area, Kai and I, during the daytime. And, to go out and go to the bathroom and stretch our legs for a minute before we finish the rest of the drive. And so I go into the restroom, and Kai runs up to me when I come out, and he's saying, "There's cottonus here, there's cottonus here." And on the way down, we were talking about finding Cottonus nitida, which is what's the common name for Cottonus nitida? It's common green June beetle. I'm not sure because Metabolist shares a common name. Just the green June beetle, the eastern version basically of Cottonus metabolist from the west. It's smaller, I think a bit more variable in coloration actually. So, but Kai was sort of bringing up that we could go here, we could check some spot there, something for Cottonus, and I was just like, I can get them from somebody else and not in a big rush to collect them. If we come across them, So they're flying around, and Kai tells me to go get a net. I was like, I didn't bring a net because I wasn't planning on doing any sweep netting or anything. Usually, other than grasshoppers, what I'm going for on trips is stuff I have to flip things for or dig around for. And so bringing a net I always do bring a net, but my current net has been resurrected and repaired, and I didn't have it with me yet because Kim Wisman is still, we have to meet up and he has to give me anyway. So I didn't have a net. And so Kai was sort of berating me for not bringing a net. I was like, "Oh, what are you doing? You didn't bring a net?" And also the irony being that not only did I not bring a net, but Kai also did not bring a net. So there you go. Anyway, so the Cottonus nitida are flying around, and some of them are hovering about maybe a foot off the ground, and then all of a sudden something would happen. They just take off and go up in the trees or something like that. And so Kai's thinking like what are we going to use? And he wants to get one of the blankets from the back of my car and soak it completely with water and use it to throw on the Cottonus. And I'm like, this would be a massive inconvenience. I don't think it's going to work. So I'm sitting there just sort of like thinking to myself and metaphorically scratching my head, like, what can we use? What can we use? And then I realized my hat. we could use my hat to catch them. And so Kai was the spotter for the Cotinus nitida, and he would point at one that came down near ground level, and then I'd run off and try to smack it down with my hat and get it under the hat. And it worked surprisingly well. I think that I had a success rate of somewhere between 40 and 60%. And so caught 6 or 7, I think. Kai would have to correct me on that. So 6 or 7 of them, seems like both sexes, male heavy, I think. But we got them. We did it. You know, people are like staring at us while we're running around and trying to catch the Cotinus and whatnot. So, but we got them, and so hopefully I can get those going, and gotta get a pair to Kai before he goes out west. He wants them. So yeah, so it was a very good trip all around. I got to make some observations on Apheloria, Polychroma in the wild. Got to see, you know, what they're eating. They just seem to be generalist detritivores feeding on very well rotted leaf litter. And I think the things that are going to be the biggest hurdles for captive breeding them will be providing leaf litter that's in a good stage. They don't seem to be picky, but they want to, like, it doesn't seem to matter what kind of well decomposed hardwood litter you give them, but it does seem to matter what state it's in. So giving them a good variety all at the same time so they can find exactly the part they want to nibble. They are, according to Samson, they're actually day active. You can find them all day and all night. They just sort of come out whenever, when the weather is moderately adequate. If it's not too dry or what have you, or not too cold, they'll be out. So temperature is probably not an issue. But ventilation is, because the air is very humid, but they're not, especially the large ones, aren't just, when they're out feeding, they're not just in stuffy conditions constantly. Even if the humidity is high, there's still airflow and whatnot. So did find a couple of smaller ones out and about. So one was about maybe an inch, and then one was maybe about an inch and a half. The majority of them were very sizable, about 2.5 inches or so. They're quite large, Apheloria. So yeah, that, and flipped over a log and found 2 of them in molting chambers underneath the logs. And it's sort of a mix of the basal clay that's under the logs with sort of the very well rotted, very pulverized wood from the logs. Sort of, it's like basically soil, not flake soil, but it's even finer than that. It's like basically the powdery material made out of the rotten wood that they've either chewed up or that something else has chewed up, and they've worked into their little pupal cell, or their little molting cell. So yeah, so I feel pretty optimistic with them. I actually have them here in the office. I had tried a group of them earlier from Samson. They didn't seem to do quite as well. A lot of factors involved there. I did a whole big fancy setup with clay and stuff like that. And for all I know, I could go and open that up and find a bunch of babies, like what happened with the Pachydermis. So yeah, they'll be hanging out here in the bug room and getting daily misting and care to keep those leaves nice and good quality. This looks like an alcoholic beverage, but it's like a weird marketing gimmick for like flavored water. So no cancel me, YouTube. Anyways, so that was Tennessee trip, Tennessee observations and stuff. Let me scroll up here and catch up on some of the chat. Some eggs. Says my bull jumping spider babies died. That's very unfortunate. Do you have any idea why? Is it humidity or not proper food, or your mom also told you not to go to rest stops at night? Honestly, it's one of the safest places in my experience. Usually when we go to rest stops at night, there's Not a lot of people other than the staff there, and the best part about the staff at rest stops is they're probably used to seeing every single strange activity on Earth. So people walking around with headlamps, looking, off in the distance is not very suspicious to them at all. So there's usually some eyes, and they don't care about you looking for bugs. And you also know you're not on private property if you're at a rest stop, so that's great to have sort of free reign over these little areas to collect bugs. Vernal beetles, like the beetles, but spring only. Okay. Anthony Green, trying to figure out what the urinal beetles are. Stag beetles of some sort I tend to find at like campground urinals or public fairgrounds. They just seem to walk into men's urinals for the moisture. I'm assuming maybe it's a Wisconsin thing. Yeah, it might be a weird Wisconsin thing. A lot of what is the family name currently or grouping? Polyphaga, suborder Polyphaga. Let's see what the nominate thing is. Oh, they don't have a nominate one. At least it's not New World. So a lot of just weird scarabs will do that. They'll come to lights at night and they'll wander in places trying to get closer to the lights. Or they sense the male pheromones and exert their dominance. Tennyson says, has anyone ever successfully kept and bred Camptonotus? Let's see, Camptonotus. Oh, leaf rollers. I don't know. I don't think anybody has. It's very interesting. Just doing some quick reading on those right now. Actually, what family is Taphiliska in? Just look this up real quick. They're in the bush crickets, Hepiphyni, versus an entire family, and they're a true cricket in Grylidae versus Grylocrididae. I don't know if anybody's ever bred those guys before, but they seem like they have a lot of features in common with Taphiliska, so I wouldn't be surprised if the husbandry was very similar. Deciduous forests, shelters enrolled up leaf. Last late summer to fall, nymphs in July, August, adults September through October. Very interesting. And there's some notes that they sometimes use the pods of bladdernut as a shelter instead of making a leaf-rolled shelter. So I think it's not out of the question that Taphiliska and Camptonotus have the same husbandry, or what could have the same husbandry. I'm just curious if there is diapause for the eggs of Camptonotus, which fortunately there seems to be no diapause for Taphiliska, very fortunately. Let's see what else. Hello, Hylas. Oh, heck, you forgot about this. Yeah, you'll have to go back through the dead stream and listen to the Tennessee trip details. Keep thinking you're saying my name when you say Tennessee. Yeah, sorry, Tennyson. We got the first half the word the same. By the way, thrips are a good source of food for very small jumping spider babies. I have not had issues with a combination of springtails and several different fruit fly species at once. That's actually how I've been raising the captive produced Regiuses, just giving them a buffet of different Drosophila and letting them choose. And surprisingly, even very large Regius will eat quite small Drosophila, and preferentially over eating others that are kept with them, as long as there's a lot of them. Thrips is smart. Thrips are smart. Thrips is smart. I should have put some of the daisies from the yard in the cage. How do you spell that other cricket species name, says Tennyson. Type it in the chat. This is the one that I've held on Livestream, and I did a blog post a couple days ago about the progress for the colony as a whole. because they're doing quite well. One species in this genus in North America. I wonder if there's others in the genus Taphalisca. Let's go on Wikipedia. Oh yeah, there's a lot of Taphalisca species. Wow. Another place is listed as Taphalisca lurida. Unless that one hasn't been found yet. It says it's found in Caribbean, at least in Florida. So, anyways, is it common for jumping spiders to lay multiple clutches from a single fertilization? Somebody who bought a wild-caught female from me back in late spring has gotten several sacs out of her, and all of them have been fertile, even though the first sac she laid was infertile. So yes, from quite a while ago, they can continue being fertile. So, I think if there's anything, any other important details. What's this talking about? Somebody sent me. Somebody's looking for cactus longhorns. Oh, I don't know if I'm ever gonna have the gumption to captive breed cactus longhorns. Eat a lot of food, and I think the last time I tried them, they wouldn't eat the store-bought cactus pads. And things that eat cactus pads either have to be really slow-growing and long-lived, like what was I calling them? The gummy flower bugs. Oh, I don't have their thing in here anymore. It's in the living room. The true bugs that Will and I found on what was it called? Choyas in Cave Creek Canyon. We found them. The nymphs are very pretty. They have like reddish eyes, and they're red, green, and yellow. Very reminiscent of like a Jolly Rancher candy, and they smell very candy-like too, kind of like a stink bug smell, but even sweeter. And I collected them thinking, oh yeah, this will be easy. They just feed on cactuses. And yes, they are extremely easy to keep because all you have to do is give them a cactus pad. The problem is they are ridiculously long-lived. The adults that matured last year in late September are still alive now. And this is a very small insect. I mean, it's not tiny, but it's quite small for something that would live a year or more. But it's been very easy to take care of them because I can just cut my Opuntia pads out in the front yard. And I think they've eaten maybe 3 to 5. The whole group of about a dozen has only eaten 3 to 5 Opuntia pads over the last year, basically. So, but it's going to be difficult to make them commercially available because of that extremely long adult lifespan. And the other thing connected to that is they waited that whole time to start reproducing. I just got my first eggs maybe last week from them. So they were adults since last September. It took them 10 months to become reproductively active for whatever reason. Must just be part of their life cycle to take advantage of summer rains and when the cacti will be at their juices. Who's this little friend here? Oh, it's a little fly or something at the window. So Opuntia could grow on clay soil or garden soil or something. Opuntia cespitosa, the one that I have, will grow in any soil conditions, including quite moist, as long as the pads are elevated. So what you can do is get a clay pot and fill it with just potting soil or succulent soil or something. Make sure there's a big drainage hole in the bottom, and then just plant the cactus in the pot over the spot that you want to grow it, even if it's very wet. The roots can take very wet conditions, but the actual pads cannot take a ton of moisture, although cespitosa is very dry or very, very condition tolerant, being a Midwestern species. Is it a sin to combine colonies of insects of the same species, same locality, and same vendor, but different orders? I don't think so. I think that's probably fine. as long as you're acting in good faith that they haven't changed anything or added anything in between purchases. But I don't see a problem with that. Now, I am very paranoid that something could go wrong if I do that, and that's why I don't do that unless I absolutely have to. But I don't see anything morally wrong with that unless you're paranoid like I am. So anyway, so those gummy flower bugs I might make available, and with a life cycle like that, and depending on how many offspring they have, they might be a bit up there on the cost thing. But they'll live at room temperature. They'll eat just cactus. You don't have to have a substrate or anything with them. It's nice to sniff them. They're kind of active. You're kind of enjoying them as much as you would the cactus alone, I guess. Let me go run in the other room and figure out what the. Well, I can figure this out. It's a caridiid. It feeds on cactus. It's native to. It's actually there's a subspecies that's native to Florida and one that's native to. Native to where else? Florida and Arizona. Florida and the Southwest. Oh, there's multiple species in that genus. I'm just gonna pop those open and see if the other ones are cool. Okay, there's a species from Texas. Another species from Arizona. Another species from Texas. Here I'll post a link to the bug guide. That's where they have them. Oh, of course they have them distinguished by subspecies because they have some specimens from Florida. I think the Florida ones might be prettier as adults. Might be something I'll have to go after in the future, but I have no idea what sort of timetable they're on for adult emergence and whatnot. I'll find a good picture. So yeah, the Latin name is Shelenidia vitiger, subspecies vitiger. I'm trying to find a good picture that has all of the life stages in it because that's not very difficult. It shouldn't be very difficult to find. My lord, if I wasn't afraid of like a copyright infringement or something, which I don't even think that applies because it's a common name for an insect, trying to create a common name for it at least. I would definitely call these Jolly Rancher because they look just like it. It's crazy. They look like a green Jolly Rancher. It's even with like the antennae and the little markings are kind of like the plastic on the wrapper. So this is a picture of the nymphs and a picture of a cluster of adults of the subspecies that I have. Stink roaches from me. I've got 3 that survived my initial abuses, says Chris Snyder. Yeah, I have not added to my Simondoa colony since I received. The first ones I got were from Samson, a small number, and then I believe I added another group from Bugs in Cyberspace, and that was it. And those both Samson's came from Bugs in Cyberspace, and both of those came from the same person, which was Mr. Peter Nesgrecki from Harvard, who's one of the co-describers for the species. So I see no problem with it, although you may want to reassess your husbandry if you are having some issues with them. For Simondoa, I think they really like to be crowded. And although it's weird because the males seem territorial and will bite each other's antennae, but that doesn't seem to put back the health of the colony as a whole whatsoever, and they do very well when they're quite crowded. So, look at this. Is one from Arkansas that looks more like the eastern subspecies, but well, they have a surprisingly larger range. There's reports of some from Illinois. Okay, I gotta look at that. Gotta see what's up there. Very interesting. I'm just gonna see. Prickly pear. Yeah. So wow, they have a very wide range. Very interesting. So, anyways, the ones that I have are from Arizona and doing very well in captivity as it is, and hopefully those eggs will hatch, and I'll get a good group of them, and maybe be able to spare some instead of just having them sort of perpetuate for me in the way that the Stilpniclora have been doing. So, trying to think, are there any other things to discuss? I wouldn't mind getting back to my other work that I need to do because there's things that I need to finish doing today, just to give everybody a window into my existence. Tomorrow, I have to finish moving boulders for my neighbor to finish her landscaping and putting away things. Just it is we're in the thick of the chaos in the bug room right now because getting the momentum going is one thing, and having a bunch of containers ready to move things into is sort of the first step. And then we get to this point where I am constantly making new containers with the brass micro screen and other stuff. And uh, at the same time, moving things out of old containers, refreshing some bins that needed it, like moving some Versatria species around and things like that. And so there's a constant stream of dirty containers that need to be washed and prepared for the next thing that has to go into it. So poor Christian today has just been getting deluged with things, and then he may be mid cleaning something, and I'll be like, actually drop that. I need this cleaned right away. And so, it's a whole process. It's really something that I can't do solo. It would take me much longer to do all of it solo. So I have to have somebody doing washing containers on a day like this. And so that's what it's been like. Showbug, it says some eggs. Let me do a quick look here at the chat. How do you keep your arid springtails? Have some E. uno strigata in my roach enclosure and they explode in population seem easy. I can't seem to keep them alive if I separate them. Yeah, if they're doing well with your roaches, you can basically use that as a primary culture. But there's just a constant stream of debris from the roaches, which is probably really keeping the Uno strigata happy. Although they seem very content to live by themselves too, out of all the springtails that I've kept, other than Sinella and CFF Canada. So you've got me straightened out on it. I kept them entirely too dry. And I don't really keep the Simondoa too moist either. The back half of the substrate's always moist. The front end can just dry out completely. And at this time of year, because I'm paranoid about overwatering, all the bark will end up drying out, and they're still fine with it. Also, I killed off all the Botella Sanae. I can attest that they are not invasive in homes, says Chris Snyder. Yep. How am I doing? They're over here. They're probably fine with all these things that I have. I should probably tomorrow force myself to do a husbandry day up here, which we're crossing the line where all winter the office husbandry was very relaxing for me. There's a very finite number of things that I had to do, and it reminded me a lot of when I was back in my younger years, when I was starry-eyed and checking on my singular roach rack that I had that was half the size of this current rack here even, and with maybe like 15 species on it, and it would be a very pleasant experience. And now I have things I have to do and things need to be checked on, and a lot of these are tobiids that do not do well with long periods of no husbandry, and so I must force myself to check in on them. But fortunately, they can cut corners because the watering ports. But a lot of them would probably appreciate a touch up on their food right now. So some eggs, I will show bug in a second. Got to think of a good one to show, but I have an idea. My E. Javonica produced babies, though, says Chris Snyder. Just in case everyone has decided I'm 100% incompetent, I'd like only 90% at most. Tennyson says, I suppose that is a good idea. I have tons of Entomobrai unostrigata in my roach enclosure, and they are the only species on the dry side, so they are fairly easy to separate. Going to give Russ some soon for his garter snake enclosure that is too dry for curvicida, but he says there are also some moist areas, so I think they should work well. Yeah, you can cover all your bases basically with Unostrigata, Cecobria, and CFF Canada in terms of going everywhere from things that like it very moist to things that like it pretty much bone dry. Ellen says, oh no, Kyle's getting close to becoming a ghost again. Quick order everything he has available. Well, yeah, I have to become a ghost because I got to go to Arizona for 2 weeks, and I'll probably give myself a week of buffer room to recover when I get back and put things away. So, hi TJ, good to see ya. Or invertebrate dad, everybody knows it's TJ anyways. So, I might. You're coming in after I've already discussed the Tennessee trip, but I might be wrapping up early. But some eggs is asking for me to show bugs, so I need to think of a bug to show. I think I have an idea. Let me see if any of them are out. All right, the Aphiloria are not out because the surface of the substrate is dried out, so I'm going to give them a good misting. It might pull a couple of them out before the end of the stream, and I can grab one. I've already showed them off before, but these ones are a lot bigger than the ones I had before. So, all right, Aphiloria are misted. There's something else that I had in here. Oh, yes, of course. Some egg says show bug, so I got to show bug. Ah! Right on the fingers. Ah! All right. Let's see if we get some better lighting here. So this, I think she's too moist. The coloration is not optimal. I think she's too fresh. I guess it shows up better on the webcam than it does there. This is from a U.S. seller in California or Arizona. This is Messinarina torquata ugandensis or whatever it is. According to Kai and Allen, it's unlikely that any pure ugandensis are actually in cultivation. So it's CF ugandensis or just torquata or whatever, but it's a Messinarina. This is a strain that doesn't have a name in the U.S. and seems to be different from strains elsewhere. So when distributed, we'll probably call them U.S. blues to distinguish it from some other lines of different origins. So this is an adult female. I think I received the larvae for these in January or February. They were first instars and they grew quite rapidly. I think I have 5 or 6 females and pupal cells, and all of my probable males then are still larvae. Actually, you guys might remember I brought a big old larvae on the stream at one point, so that may have actually been the larvae that then turned into this female or one of the other ones. So, looking forward to breeding these, and hopefully males mature in a timely manner, because again, they're still larvae. I've been informed that Messinarina can live for about a year with optimal care. So that's what I'm hoping for in this situation, because I would really like to keep this strain going and maybe do a little bit of selection for the amount of markings on the elytra. The coloration is definitely showing up. It looks better on the stream. I think it might just be because this female's fresh and maybe a bit moist, that her elytra are not as shiny and blue as they could be. So let's see. TJ, excitement or aghastness over me shaving. The change in the tropical pinks from Sinella curvicida to Cecobria species is being discussed. When do you think you might have these available? Once I have my own place, they're definitely something I'd be interested in. Well, I'd be banished if I just call them tropical pinks. Tennyson, again, I just waiting. These females became active, and my males are still larvae. And when the males emerge, then that'll be when I pair them up. So the females will just get hopefully nice and fat and satiated until then. I was also told that these are just ever so slightly smaller than actual Goliaths. Having produced a very tiny Goliath in the past, I can definitely see that, especially if the male larvae are turned into substantially larger adults than this individual here. But the male larvae are quite huge. They seem to be larger than the Goliaths that I had before either, and obviously not going to have any issues with them pupating in the setup that they're in. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. The Goliath bin, I can be shamed for this, but I actually have not even checked on them. It's a gigantic plastic bin on the bottom shelf of the beetle rack, and I set it up with all the fungal mycelium and whatnot, and haven't even checked in on it basically since whenever I had originally talked about it. So that would have been right before, that would have been right in March. So, if it actually ended up working, then I would expect to see beetles soon. So, yeah, well, maybe in a couple of weeks, because that's right around the timetable for the Goliaths that I had reared before. It seemed like it was August, September when adults started popping up. So we will see. Schrodinger's Goliath. Yeah, it's the similar story as to the springtails up there, where I will put in a lot of effort into these very extravagant things that have a good chance of working, but then in practice, they're so cumbersome or ungainly that I just don't want to have anything to do with them, because to check through that for larvae, I have to pull it off of the shelf onto the floor, and it's really heavy. And then I have to dig through it and hopefully find something. And then that's not even the worst part. The worst part is then I have to put it back up onto the shelf. So the same thing with the springtail thing. So I like things that I can pop open and quick check on very quickly, which is why I really enjoy the critter keepers and whatnot that I have. Very easy to pull. They're a good weight for me to work with, basically. So, but yeah, if that doesn't work, I will probably take a break from trying to rear them for a while, in favor of more things like these guys. Oh, this is very painful. A lot more active than the Goliaths, I can say. Or at least this female is just like on the go. So, and thinking any other bugs, see if any of the Aphiloria have come out. Oh yeah, they came out. A couple of them came out. Don't cyanide me. That wouldn't be very nice. And it cyanided me. All right. So, anyways, Aphiloria polychroma. Whoops. From the Tennessee trip here. And again, I've showed them off before, but this is a little bit more personal because I went out and collected them. If I can't manage to captive breed them, I may toy around with the idea of just making them available as wild caughts after they've stabilized a bit in captivity, because from some things that Samson's told me about his just sort of experimenting with them and whatnot, they are very long-lived. Even if you don't breed them, it's a year-ish as full size, at least. So I could see it maybe being worth it to get in a captive group of them and sort of making a couple of them available a year to people to try, even if they're not captive bred, and not over collect them. look and see what's going on in the chat. Green beetles doing, forgot the name of them. The Dichronorhina, maybe? Out of the green beetles I have, there's the Chlorocala, which are not doing well. It's a different story for another day. And Alan might be able to bemoan that with me, perhaps. The Dichronorhina, derbiana flower beetles are doing very well. I've actually gotten larvae from them. And the Cotinus mutabilis is another green beetle. I got larvae from the captive pupated adults, and so now I have larvae that I can pupate and get a truly captive bred generation going. The Macinerina moves much faster than I expected to. Yeah, I was not expecting them to move that fast either, Bunclomimus. Goliaths don't move that fast in my experience. So, delicious millipede, give it a taste. Yeah, Brett, I'm going to pass on that. St. Patrick ones, I think. Might have been Dichronorhina then, Tennyson. So, but anyways, yeah, I could see myself making some groups of these available. It wouldn't be many a year because we don't know how fast they reproduce. They're very common, but if they're long-lived, even if they're very common, they can only produce a handful of babies a year, and then out of that, how many of them make it to adulthood with all the things that eat them? Because there are a lot of carabids and flies and whatnot that do specialize in eating different types of flat millipedes and glowworms and things like that. So yeah, that's something I got to think about and tabulate and whatnot. So, but very, very pretty and very active, and similar to the Hemipterosaura, you can instantly get an activity boost in the enclosure just by giving a misting. As you all saw, I couldn't find any before. Misted it, and then several of them came out, and they don't seem to be drinking. They just seem to be just coming out to just sort of crawl around and maybe graze on some things. So we will go ahead and put this young man back. So yeah, I would never have thought that they'd be day active, but I guess when you're loaded with cyanide and most of your predators are active whenever, and you're primarily trying to avoid vertebrate predators, it doesn't really matter when you're active. So, Cotinus mutabilis, that's Tennyson. Yes, I got a good crop of larvae from those, and currently rearing them up to produce let's see, I guess this is the F1 for captive breeding, but for closing the loop. Once I raise those larvae to adulthood, then I will be producing the first completely captive generation of them, which is exciting for me. I didn't think I'd have such a relatively easy time with metabolis. Really, the main thing they're picky about is pupating. They're seedlings, but they want to pupate in sand or clay instead of in their frass, like pretty much most other seedlings seem to. So that's what I gave them, and they did just fine in it. I'm sure Nidida will be very similar, and I'll just use probably sand for those, or I guess they were on clay, so I can use, maybe I'll try both of them and see what happens. So any other questions or comments on anything before I wrap up the stream? Desperately scramble to find something resembling actual food to eat before inevitably going back to the bug grind. And the grind, it really is. Tomorrow will be, tomorrow's gonna suck. But at least the 23rd. Here's a question from Stephen Logan. How do you keep beetles from eating each other? That depends on what type of beetle and what life stage. So you should probably be a little bit more specific there, because some things just won't eat each other. Like you won't see adult darklings really eat each other unless somebody dies. And other things like larvae of certain things will eat each other very readily. So some eggs, Ischnoptera. What would you like to know about the Ischnoptera, some eggs? And Tennyson asks, how are your Lanxoblatta rudis doing? L. rudis, I found a few more nymphs in with them. There's a lot of adults alive. I am not feeling as confident as I did when I first found the set of nymphs originally in with them. So I'm probably, TJ, if you're here, probably going to send some adult pairs or presumably fertilized females to somebody who's had consistent success with them. I may downsize the enclosure size to force them into closer confines with each other. That may trigger some breeding or trigger release of more babies. So Ischnoptera, are they cool? I love Ischnoptera a lot. I love Derapeltiformis quite a bit. Can say that now that I have, I think, 2 localities of Derapeltiformis going, including the original Sexy Legs locality from Tennessee, which has very large adults, very striking body and leg color contrast. Hopefully make those finally available. What is going on here? Seems we have an escape from my culture of weevils here, of my grain weevils. Not arising. Do I update that page already? Up to date. Cytophilus. So you guys got to be reined in. I'm gonna have to work on that after the stream. Never stops. Striking legs too. Yes, striking legs too on the Erishnoptera derapeltiformis. Stephen, for ground beetle adults eating each other, a lot of carabids they'll just eat each other, especially larvae. Some of them is very difficult to raise some of them communally because the larvae will eat each other. The adults will eat the larvae. The adults will eat each other. It really depends on what type of carabid you're working with too. So the best way is to find out what their favorite food is and put as much of it into the enclosure and make it available at all times as possible. So I caught a Parkoblatta female that looks really small. I was wondering if it was normal. Says some eggs. Virginica is very small as an adult, and I think Parkoblatta virginica is the second smallest Parkoblatta, with the first smallest being a Boliana. Brett says excited for Derapeltiformis to become available. Cannot find any. Yes, the ones in Tennessee, as I am told, can be kind of difficult to find. Involves flipping of debris on the ground at very specific times of year, versus further south in Alabama, we were finding them just in random leaf litter and sort of damp leaf litter at a couple of quality sites. So if there are no more questions or comments, I will go ahead and wrap up the stream and wish everyone a lovely evening as we move into the mid to late summer vibes. How big is Pennsylvanica compared to Virginica? Northern Pennsylvanica compared to Northern Virginica, Northern Pennsylvanica is about 2.2 times as long and as big, I guess, as Parkoblatta virginica. So, oh, hi, Derek. Good to see you. I don't think I've seen you on here before. Welcome. Now we can have some more isopod breeding project conversations on here with the masses instead of hoarding all of our precious knowledge in the texts. So, but I'm going to get going so that I can work on putting away and making all those lovely bugs available for all of you delightful people who grace the live stream weekly. And with that being said, I'll see everybody next week, same time, same place. And until then and beyond then, may your cultures ever be bountiful.